Jason had always prided himself on his discipline, on his ability to compartmentalize, to shut out temptation with cold, unwavering logic. Yet in his own home, temptation had taken root in ways he never anticipated. It lingered in the quiet hum of the house, in the way shadows stretched along the walls at dusk, in the ever-growing presence of Bradley, a presence he had tried and failed to ignore. The boy had changed. No, not a boy anymore, a man, sculpted by time and sharpened by something Jason couldn't name. He moved differently now, more deliberate, more assured, exuding an unspoken challenge that simmered beneath every interaction. His glances were no longer idle flickers of attention, but weighted observations, full of unvoiced intention. There was a heat to him, a quiet smolder that sent ripples through Jason's carefully maintained world. And Jason, reserved, rational, responsible Jason, felt the shift, the gradual erosion of boundaries he once thought unbreakable. The air between them was thick, laced with something unspoken, something dangerous. Every accidental brush of skin, every prolonged moment of eye contact, was a thread pulling tighter, fraying the line Jason had so carefully drawn. He wasn't sure how much longer he could pretend not to see it. The house felt different the moment Sarah's car disappeared down the driveway, swallowed by the horizon. It wasn't just the absence of her voice, her scent lingering in the hallways, or the usual hum of domestic routine that suddenly felt hollow. No, something far more insidious had settled in its place, something heavy, charged, electric. Jason noticed it almost immediately, though he told himself he was imagining things. The quiet wasn't just quiet, it was waiting, and somewhere within that silence, Bradley lingered. Dinner was uneventful, yet Jason felt every second of it pressing down on him, suffocating in its own unspoken tension. Bradley, once indifferent, seemed unusually engaged, his voice richer, smoother, his laughter slower, deliberate. The way he watched Jason from across the table, fingers absently toying with the rim of his glass, made something deep in Jason's chest tighten. It wasn't overt, but it was there. A silent dare. A question left unasked, yet impossible to ignore. Later, as Jason moved through the house, he became acutely aware of Bradley's presence, not through sound, but through instinct. The way he moved, how his shadow flickered in the dim hallway light, how his gaze followed Jason just long enough to be noticed. It was a game, Jason realized, a slow, dangerous unraveling of whatever barriers still stood between them. By the time he reached his bedroom, shutting the door behind him, he knew one thing with certainty. Tonight, the air between them would not stay still. The stillness of the night felt unnatural, stretched too thin like a held breath that refused to be released. Jason stirred beneath the sheets, caught in that hazy place between sleep and waking, his mind sluggish yet unsettled. Something was off. It wasn't a sound that woke him. No sudden crash. No sharp noise slicing through the darkness, but a feeling deep and primal, like the weight of an unseen gaze pressing into his skin. His pulse thrummed, slow but insistent, as if some hidden part of him already understood what his conscious mind had yet to grasp. The room was cloaked in darkness, the faint silver glow of the moon casting fractured slants of light through the blinds. Jason's eyes adjusted, scanning the space, searching for a source of his unease. And then he saw it, just beyond the doorway, a shadow, too still, too patient. His breath caught in his throat. Bradley. He should have said something, should have demanded an explanation, told him to leave, anything to break this suffocating silence. But he didn't. He couldn't, because the way Bradley stood there, barely visible yet utterly present, made Jason's thoughts tangle and unravel all at once. The air between them wasn't empty. It was alive, humming with something unspeakable. And then, without a word, Bradley turned and disappeared into the darkness. A warning, a promise, Jason couldn't tell. But as he lay back, heart hammering, one truth remained. This was only the beginning. Jason told himself it was nothing, a trick of the night, a tired mind conjuring ghosts in doorways. But the weight of that moment, the way Bradley had stood there so still, so certain, clung to him like an echo long after he had disappeared. Sleep was a futile pursuit, his body restless beneath the sheets, his mind replaying the unspoken exchange over and over. He should have been disturbed, should have been angry. Instead, He felt something far more dangerous, a slow, simmering awareness that refused to be ignored. The next evening unfolded with a deceptive normalcy. Dinner was quiet, routine, yet beneath the casual conversation and the polite nods, something coiled tight between them. Jason felt it every time Bradley moved, every time their hands brushed too close. He saw it in the way Bradley watched him, not with the detached gaze of a stepson, but with something else, something measured and waiting. Jason tried to dismiss it, to shove it deep into the corners of his mind, but Bradley wasn't letting him. Later, when Jason retreated to his bedroom, he barely had time to exhale before the door creaked open again. He sat up, pulse quickening, already knowing who it was before he saw him. Bradley stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame as if he belonged there. Then, slow as a predator, he crossed the room, reached down, and traced his fingers lightly over Jason's wrist. A touch meant to test. A touch meant to break. Jason recoiled, but not fast enough. Bradley's fingers had already made contact. Barely a touch, just a whisper of warmth against his skin, but it left a searing imprint. A brand he couldn't shake. His breath hitched, sharp and uneven, his body betraying him before his mind could force it back into control. He should have shoved Bradley away, should have stood, should have said anything to cut through the thick, intoxicating air pressing between them. But he didn't. Bradley was watching him, always watching, eyes dark with something knowing, something unshakable. He had seen Jason hesitate. He had seen the way Jason froze instead of pulling back. And that hesitation, no matter how fleeting, had given him all the permission he needed. "You can pretend," Bradley murmured, voice smooth, almost amused, as he took a step closer. "But we both know the truth." Jason's throat went dry. The truth. The word burned. Because there was no truth he could live with. Only the truth that would destroy him. That would unravel every carefully laid boundary he had spent years building. Bradley's fingers ghosted higher, grazing the inside of Jason's wrist. His touch was light, deliberate, a silent demand more than a question. Jason sucked in a breath, chest tight with something dangerously close to surrender. And then, as if giving him mercy, Bradley stepped back. A smirk played at his lips, a promise in his gaze. "You'll stop fighting it soon enough," he whispered. Then he was gone. Jason spent the next few days convincing himself that moment never happened, that the warmth of Bradley's fingers had been imagined, that the way his breath had caught was nothing more than a momentary lapse in control. He'd buried himself in routine, in the safe predictability of coffee in the morning and unread emails at night. But denial was a fragile thing, and Bradley knew exactly how to chip away at it. It was in the way he moved through the house now, more assured, more present, his gaze lingering a beat too long. His touch straying just enough to remind Jason of the game they were playing. It was in the way he spoke, his words laced with a knowing edge, a quiet dare hidden beneath everyday conversations. Jason told himself he was imagining it. He told himself nothing had changed. Then, that night, when the house had settled into its usual midnight hush, the truth shattered his denial. The door creaked open, and Jason was already awake, pulse pounding against his ribs. He didn't move as Bradley stepped inside, didn't protest as the mattress dipped beneath his weight. The darkness between them was thick, humming, a presence of its own. "You're not pushing me away this time," Bradley whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Jason should have said something, anything. Instead, he let the silence answer for him. And when Bradley's lips found his, slow and insistent, Jason finally understood. He had never been fighting. He had only been waiting. Jason woke to an empty bed, the sheets beside him still faintly warm. For a moment, he lay motionless, staring at the ceiling, his pulse a steady drum against his ribs. He wasn't sure what unsettled him more, the quiet absence of Bradley or the lingering echo of his touch. The room smelled different now, something intimate woven into the air, something Jason couldn't erase no matter how much he wanted to. He told himself it was a mistake, a lapse, a moment of madness that could be undone with enough willpower. But deep down, he knew better. By the time he pulled himself from bed and stumbled into the kitchen, Bradley was already there, leaning lazily against the counter, fingers wrapped around a steaming mug. He didn't turn as Jason entered, didn't acknowledge him first. It was worse that way, somehow, that casual indifference. The unspoken claim that hung between them, like a secret neither of them could take back. Finally, Bradley glanced over, his lips curling into a smirk, as if he could read every thought tumbling through Jason's head. He lifted the mug to his lips, took a slow sip, then murmured, "You slept in." Jason swallowed hard. Every muscle in his body coiled tight. He should have ignored him, should have walked away. But when Bradley tilted his head, his gaze burning with something smug and certain, Jason knew the truth. Bradley wasn't asking if it would happen again. He was daring him to admit that it already had. Jason had always thought of desire as something predictable, something that could be controlled. A passing impulse, easily ignored. But that illusion shattered with every lingering glance, every casual brush of fingers that never felt accidental. Bradley had left his mark, not just on his skin, but somewhere deeper, somewhere Jason had spent years fortifying against weakness. And now, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shut it out. The worst part was how effortless it had become for Bradley. He didn't have to speak his intentions anymore. They bled into every movement, every unspoken exchange between them. At dinner, his foot nudged Jason's beneath the table, barely a touch, but enough to send heat flooding through Jason's veins. In passing, his fingertips would ghost against Jason's back. So brief, so fleeting, but each time leaving Jason more undone than before. And the way he looked at him now, like he owned him, like he had always known how this would end, Jason hated how much it made his breath hitch. He told himself it had to stop, that he had to draw a line. But when Bradley leaned in one night, close enough that Jason could feel his breath against his ear, and murmured, "You're thinking about me right now, aren't you?" Jason had no words, no denial, nothing but the sharp, traitorous pull of something he could no longer pretend wasn't real. Because the truth was simple. He wasn't fighting Bradley. He was already his. Sarah's return should have been a reprieve. A cold gust of reality strong enough to shake Jason from the fever dream he had allowed himself to sink into. Instead, it only made everything worse. The house felt smaller with her in it. The air stretched too thin beneath the weight of what had been done. Every glance across the dinner table, every accidental brush of hands in the hallway, was laced with a tension that neither of them acknowledged, but both of them felt. Bradley had changed, or maybe he had always been like this, and Jason was only now seeing it clearly. He no longer played its subtlety. When Sarah sat beside Jason on the couch, Bradley took the armchair opposite, one leg draped lazily over the other, watching. When she spoke, his gaze never left Jason's face, his expression unreadable, like he was daring him to break. And when she turned her back, Bradley would find the smallest ways to remind Jason of the fire he had set between them. A lingering touch to the small of his back as he passed by. A whispered breath against his neck under the guise of reaching for something. Jason's hands clenched in a fist beneath the table, his jaw tight as Sarah laughed at something meaningless. His pulse thundered beneath his skin, his body betraying him in ways he couldn't contain. Because the real danger wasn't that Bradley was still playing the game. It was that Jason had stopped wanting to win. Jason told himself he could still walk away. That if he ignored it long enough, if he let enough nights pass without giving in, whatever had ignited between them would wither and die. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had already lost. Bradley had made sure of that. It was in the way he moved through the house now. Always too close, always watching. The way his voice lowered, just for Jason, words slipping into his ear like secrets meant to unravel him. The way his touch, once fleeting, now lingered, fingers tracing the curve of his wrist, the back of his neck, the hem of his shirt, testing, daring, claiming. Jason knew he should pull away, knew he should put an end to it. But every time Bradley touched him, the words never came. Only heat, only breath, only the sharp, staggering realization that it was no longer just a mistake. It was a need. And when Bradley finally cornered him one night, his voice low, his smirk knowing, his fingers threading into Jason's, he didn't even bother pretending to resist. Because the truth was simple. Jason had never really wanted to stop.